there is that there are two things there, I suppose. One is that we know that obviously amphetamine-based substances, so the central nervous stimulants, that is one side effect. We know that these drugs keep people awake. What we also know is that it tends to enhance, as I mentioned before, it tends to enhance or exacerbate people's nervous states, their anxiety. And so if people have a predisposition or perhaps a bit more naturally nervous, then these types of drugs tend to really exacerbate that, to really worsen that. And we know that this is one of the significant problems with amphetamine use, that people have trouble sleeping after it. And so people typically start using basically pharmaceutical medications, so benzodiazepines, Valium, these sorts of things, to try and sleep. And then so you get this vicious cycle where people are basically using amphetamines for fun or to stay awake, and then they're struggling to sleep afterwards, so they're starting to take Valium and other benzos to come down, if you like. And certainly that's where we do find that some people, they have multiple drug problems, so they can present for treatment services, and it's not just that they've got a problem with speed or other amphetamines, but they've also got a problem with alcohol and with benzos as well. So this is where it gets really, really complicated and very difficult.
The night is only sort of carbon paper, blue-black, with the much poked periods of stars letting in the light, peephole after peephole, a bone-white light like death behind all things. Under the eyes of the stars and the moon's rictus, he suffers his desert pillow, sleeplessness stretching its fine, irritating sand in all directions.
We think of drugs affecting individuals, and what we've found in our work is that typically when people come to have drug problems, so when their drug use escalates in such a way that it creates problems for them, you find that those problems affect not only the individual, but basically everyone around them. So certainly their close friends, their intimate relationships, and their families, of course.
Over and over, the old granular movie exposes embarrassments, the mizzling days of childhood and adolescence, sticky with dreams, parental faces on tall stalks, alternately stern and tearful. A garden of buggy rose that made him cry. His forehead is bumpy as a sack of rocks. Memories jostle each other for face room like obsolete film stars.
It's called the gateway theory, that basically people start with, the more widely available drugs, so typically alcohol and tobacco to begin with, and then they move on to cannabis, and then they move on to other drugs. I think that's been largely discredited more recently. We do know that young people do typically move from one, if they're going to use drugs, they do typically move from one drug to another. But what we're finding nowadays is that young people cannabis is still very widely used in our society, but young people oftentimes are using ecstasy or speed as their first illicit drug, if you like. So we're finding that the issue is really availability in people's peer groups. What we're finding is that young people, if they're curious about these drugs, they'll basically take opportunities to use them, or to use whatever drugs might be around in their peer group. So if that's cannabis, then they'll try cannabis. If it's ecstasy or something else, they'll try those drugs. So it's pretty complicated, I suppose, but what we're finding now is that these drugs are very widely available in our society, and that's what's driving increased use.
He is immune to pills, red, purple, blue, how they lit the tedium of the protracted evening, those sugary planets whose influence won for him a life baptized in no life for a while, and the sweet, drugged waking of a forgetful baby. Now the pills are worn out and silly, like classical gods. Their poppy, sleepy colours do him no good.
Certainly, death is a very rare outcome of drug use. The vast majority of drug-related deaths in this country are really alcohol and tobacco-related. And we know that there's enormous problems with heroin overdose. So basically a very large number of illicit drug-related deaths are related to heroin. Very, very small numbers are related to other drugs, ecstasy, speed, these sorts of things.
Night long in the granite yard, invisible cats have been howling like women, or damaged instruments. Already he can feel daylight, his white disease, creeping up with her hatful of trivial repetitions. The city is a map of cheerful twitters now, and everywhere people eyes mica silver and blank, are riding to work in rows, as if recently brainwashed.